Welcome to This Week 4 Explainer. Today, we're diving right into the exact sequence project managers use to plan the financial and resource lifeblood of their operations, budgeting and resource allocation. If you've ever wondered how massive, ambitious ideas actually get grounded into a financially viable reality, well, you're in the right place. So, to kick things off, consider a truly monumental question. How do you build a pyramid without going completely broke? To really wrap our heads around modern project management, it actually helps to look back at an ancient scenario of managing massive, almost incomprehensible resources. I mean, just look at the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was an absolute marvel of project planning. Think about it. It took 20 years to complete and involved a project team of up to 200,000 salaried workers. Every single one of them had to be housed, fed, clothed, and managed. And here's the truly staggering part. It was built to an astounding 0.05% accuracy. That's just wild. This historical masterpiece proves that strict resource management and cost control isn't some new age corporate invention. It's an ancient, enduring challenge. And hey, if Khufu's vizier could manage that level of resource allocation thousands of years ago without computers, we can for sure master it today. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll quickly cover the budgeting imperative, cost estimation techniques, developing that comprehensive budget, resource allocation, and finally, building contingency plans. Let's get right into it. First up, the project budgeting imperative. Let's dive into this first crucial phase. We really need to grasp exactly why setting a budget is the absolute foundation of any project's survival. Budgeting isn't just about penny pinching, it's fundamentally about establishing a rock-solid cost baseline. That baseline is your North Star, the precise benchmark against which all future project performance is measured. Without a rigorous budget, there is no way to ensure the financial viability of your mission. It's what allows you to proactively control costs, instead of reactively panicking when the funds start running dry. Simply put, it is the financial blueprint of your success. Moving right along to part 2, cost estimation techniques. Okay, so how do we actually get these numbers without just pulling them out of thin air? The first method we use is analogous estimating. Think of this as your quick and dirty reality check. It relies heavily on historical data. Say you built a software system last year for $50,000, and you're building a very similar one this year. You just use that previous project as your benchmark. It's a top-down approach, which is fantastic for the early phases of planning when you don't quite have all the details yet, but you just need a rough order of magnitude to see if the project even makes sense. Now, once we need a bit more rigor, we step up to parametric estimating. This is your mathematical heavy hitter. You take statistical project variables, like the exact number of lines of code, the square footage of a building, or the weight of materials, and you scale your costs up or down based on those specific parameters. When your historical data is clean and your mathematical relationships are validated, this method is highly accurate and super fast to run. Finally, we reach bottom-up estimating. This is the whole shebang, the meticulous foundation of cost planning. Here, you aren't looking at the project from the top down. You're literally building it from the ground up. You take your detailed work breakdown structure and you meticulously estimate the cost of every single individual work package or activity. Then you aggregate all those tiny costs together to get the grand total. It definitely takes the most time, but man, it yields the absolute highest accuracy for your final project cost. And this beautifully illustrates a distinct trade-off. Analogous estimating is super fast and great for early conception, but it has lower accuracy. The bottom-up estimate, on the other hand, is incredibly accurate and detailed, but it's time-intensive and demands a fully baked work breakdown structure. A smart project manager will often use the analogous estimate early on to get buy-in, but then rely completely on the bottom-up estimate to lock in that final approved budget. Which brings us to part 3, developing the comprehensive budget. Transitioning from estimating costs to actually finalizing them, we see that a comprehensive budget is never just one giant lump sum. It's a combination of vital categories. First, you have your direct costs. These are the absolute essentials tied specifically to your project work, like labor, materials, and equipment. But hey, you cannot forget the indirect costs. That's the shared overhead, administrative support, and facility expenses that basically keep the lights on while your team works. And finally, reserves. A true budget has to include funds purposefully set aside for the uncertainty and risks we absolutely know are coming. We'll dive deeper into those reserves in a minute. All right, part 4, resource allocation and optimization. Now we're shifting from the money side of things to the people and time side. Look at this resource Gantt chart. It visually grounds what can otherwise feel like super abstract task assignments. By mapping out exactly when team members like Maria and Bob are working and for how many hours, you can actually visualize your capacity. This is an absolute lifesaver. It keeps you from accidentally booking someone to work a 16-hour shift on a random Tuesday.
But what happens when Maria and Bob just aren't enough? Welcome to the harsh reality of resource constraints. If our resources are truly inadequate to meet peak demand, we have to use a technique called resource leveling. Leveling balances the demand, but spoiler alert, it usually means we have to delay the project schedule. Time becomes the variable. On the flip side, if we actually have enough resources but just want to avoid burning our team out with erratic spikes in workload, we use resource smoothing. Smoothing simply evens out the workload by utilizing the natural slack in our schedule so the final deadline remains completely fixed. To figure out whether you need to smooth or level, you pull up a resource histogram. This is this fantastic bar chart that visually stacks up the number of resources you've assigned over time. If a specific department or a team member like Maria is loaded at greater than 100% of their actual capacity, boom, this histogram immediately spikes into a dangerous peak. It gives the project manager an instant visual warning to step in and adjust things before burnout or failure occurs.
Finally, we hit part 5, building contingency plans.
Because let's face it, absolutely no project goes perfectly according to plan, whether it's a software rollout or an ancient pyramid. That is exactly why we must build contingency plans. I want to emphasize this really powerful quote from the analysis of Boston's massive Big Dig project. Contingencies should be built in for both schedule and cost, and updated on a regular basis to determine the true cost of the project. Massive, complex projects prove time and time again that things like inflation, sudden utility relocations, and shifting regulatory changes are totally inevitable. You literally cannot just cross your fingers and hope they won't happen. You've got to construct rigid safety nets for your schedule and your budget to absorb those shocks. So here is exactly how those safety nets are sliced up in your total project funding. Your base estimate, let's say it's 70% of your total funds, covers the actual planned work. Then you've got the contingency reserve, maybe 20%. The project manager controls this, and it covers the known unknowns, like expected rework or minor material price fluctuations. Finally, we have the management reserve, that last 10%. This is kept under lock and key by senior leadership to cover total unknown unknowns, the massive, completely unforeseeable external shocks that literally no one could have predicted. Which brings us to the end of this explainer. But before we go, I want to leave you with a thought to really chew on. What actually happens to a project's final quality if the budget and resources aren't meticulously protected from day one? Well, the deliverables suffer, the team burns out, and the whole project kind of just falls apart. Protecting that baseline, it's fundamentally about protecting the integrity of the entire project. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and keep building those rock-solid foundations.